All right, do you have $1,000 or even $500? Let's get you started in the tax sale business. Now I'm going to show you the exact process that I would use if I was starting today with $1,000 or less. First off, before we get started, my name is Casey Dimon. I've been investing in tax liens and tax deeds for well over 2 decades now, and I've been training others for more than a dozen years through my videos, books, and the comprehensive training platform that I operate at TaxSaleAcademy.com. So most people think that you need a ton of money to get started in real estate investing. That is just not true. In fact, you can kick off your tax deed investment journey with a very small amount of capital, then grow that investment and work your way up to bigger and bigger deals. Today, I'm going to walk you through exactly how I would do that if I was starting from scratch. We would do that by focusing on cheap lots, flipping them for profit, and scaling up your business. Now, I've got videos on coming up with the funds to invest. Partners, credit cards, loans, lots and lots of creative ways to come up with those funds. But for the purpose of this video, we're going to assume that you have $1,000 or less. That is all you can get your hands on. So with that in mind, let's get started. All right, the first step to starting your tax deed investment journey with less than $1,000 is to focus on something you can afford. Unfortunately, that is not going to be the 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2-car garage house with a white picket fence in the nice section of town. It doesn't work like that. But it will likely be a rather boring, cheap, vacant lot, most likely in a very rural area. Now, lots often have lower taxes, so the starting bids are going to be much less money. They produce less competition for them since they don't seem as desirable to some end users. And in rural areas, there is often an oversupply and under demand of vacant lots to the locals. However, you as an investor can leverage internet marketing to sell these lots all across the world. So that lack of interest on a local scale actually helps us out because the local investor competition will decrease, and then we can take those properties and sell them to people all across the world. Now let's talk about how we can find these deals. The first thing you need to do is research local markets. You're going to start off by looking at local tax deed auctions in rural counties. Many rural counties will sell lots and lots of vacant lots for very low prices. And I can't emphasize this enough. Small rural areas. If there's a list of 100 or 200 vacant properties, that's probably where you need to start. The next thing is you need to make sure you are very, very patient. It may take some time to find the right deal, but there's plenty of opportunities out there if you're willing to put in the time and if you're willing to look. And often, they'll start in the $300, $400 range. If you nailed your market selection, you'll be able to buy them at prices pretty close to that. Remember, your first deal must be a success. That's all there is to it. You don't have the capital to make any mistakes. Rushing into an investment because of FOMO or fear of missing out is the worst thing you can do. It has to be a flawless investment. And I get it. It's going to be hard for a lot of new investors, so it takes patience. Once you have found that potential property, the next step is to make sure it is profitable. And you need to go through a due diligence and evaluation step. Now, before you bid on any property, you have to do this homework. I can't stress this enough, right? Due diligence is everything in this business. Obviously, there's a lot to due diligence. I have hours and hours of training on this topic inside the Tax Sale Academy. And it is impossible to go over everything in just a quick episode. But when it comes to this type of investing specifically, I want you to pay attention to a couple things. The first thing is to look for red flags. Look for things that stand out. If you're looking at a vacant lot and it is the last lot in a subdivision that was developed 30, 40 years ago, it probably is the last lot for a reason. It probably has never been built on for a reason. It's probably reserved for water retention, wastewater treatment, an easement, that kind of thing. Also, for these types of properties that are cheap, make sure they're not landlocked, oddly shaped, or too small to build on. Dirt roads, they're okay, but make sure there is at least a road to it, both legally and physically. HOA fees are also common on a lot of these properties, even though they might not have that many amenities. A lot of these subdivisions were developed 60s, 70s, and they had, grand plans when they developed these subdivisions. They attached fees to them, and those fees sometimes are going to be very cost prohibitive. You might have a lot worth $500 with a $100 per month HOA fee, so be careful when it comes to that. You also need to make sure you value that property, and this will typically be different than most valuations. You might have a few properties in that area that have sold that you're able to use as comps. If you do, that's great. But you might not have a single comp in that area. There might just be such an oversupply that nobody is buying properties there. In that case, the value that you bring here is through the exposure that you can bring to the property through your internet marketing methods. If it is usable and it is cheap enough, somebody somewhere across the billions of people on earth will buy it. The question is, can you get it in front of that someone? If you have a buyer's list, you have a massive, massive head start. If not, plan on selling that property through Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, eBay, forums, or other similar sites, and browse those sites ahead of time to see just how cheap something needs to be in order to attract attention. The goal here is to find a property that's very inexpensive to buy, is usable in some fashion, and can be resold for such a cheap price that you can always find a buyer. All right, next up, it's time for the auction. When you found a promising lot that you think you can sell and make a few bucks off of, and you've done all your research, go out there and buy the property. This is actually the simplest part of the entire equation that a lot of people stress out about. First off, make sure there aren't any unexpected fees added. Check on the taxes that are due for the year that you're buying the property. Check on deed prep fees, that kind of stuff. Then at the auction, don't blow your budget because you get frustrated because somebody else bids on the property you want. Stick to your numbers. You'll be fine. Again, the auction, that's the easiest part. Once you've won the property, fantastic. We need to turn that into a profit now. The quickest way to grow your small investment is by flipping that property to another investor or to a speculator. We can do this very, very quickly. We just let them deal with any issues on that property. The goal here is not to get the maximum possible amount of money out of that property because that's going to take forever. The goal is to roll your capital over time and time again. And we can do this by marketing the property to other investors. A lot of other investors, a lot of speculators are looking for properties that they can get very, very cheap. So list your property on real estate investor websites, Facebook Marketplace, forums, chat groups, Craigslist, land buying, websites, classified ads, wherever you can list your property, list your property. Since you purchased the property at a low price, you can offer at a slight markup and still attract buyers while still also making money. And in the meantime here, you need to be building your buyers list as you market that property so you're able to leverage it in the future. Now, when you sell that property, the best way to sell it is with an as-is title and a quit claim deed. You should not be concerned with clearing the title to that property. If the buyer requires title insurance and a warranty deed for a $1,000 property, they are not the buyer you need. You can utilize a quit claim deed, which is very simple, very low cost, to transfer the property from you to them. They can deal with the title issues moving forward. That's going to save you a substantial amount of money because a suit to quiet title or a tax foreclosure certification will likely be cost prohibitive for you. And even if it's not cost prohibitive entirely, it will kill your margin. So find a property cheap enough that you can also sell it cheap enough where a buyer accepts a quit claim deed and an as-is title. Your goal is to price that property so it sells very, very quickly. Again, your goal is not to get rich from this deal. Your goal is to roll that money over time and time again. Once you have sold that property, reinvest the profits and repeat the process. Use that money to buy another cheap lot or maybe even 2 cheap lots this time. And since you're flipping them rather quickly and selling with a quick claim deed, you can keep this process going. You can snowball your capital. You can even dive into OTC investing once you learn what you're doing. I've got an entire class on this inside the Tax Sale Academy, and many members have created near on-demand income streams for themselves. Here's the beauty of this process. The more you do it, the more capital you will have to work with. The numbers just get bigger and bigger and bigger. So eventually, you'll be able to buy more and more properties in those rural areas. Maybe you do 10 or 20 at a time, or you move on to higher valued properties if that's what you want to do. This whole strategy is about building momentum. Start small, and that's okay, but do not stay there. Start small, stay patient, grow your business one deal at a time. So there you have it. There's a simple strategy, a step-by-step guide to starting tax-sale investing with a very small budget. Focus on the very rural areas. Find those cheap lots. Flip them quickly for a few bucks. Do it time and time again. Rinse and repeat and grow your capital over time. Remember, it comes down to patience, due diligence, a willingness to start small, and your desire to learn what you are doing before just diving in and hoping for the best, which will blow right through your small budget. If you are consistent with this process, you will be amazed at how quickly you can build up your investment capital. That's all I've got for today. If you enjoyed this episode, please do me a huge favor and leave a 5-star review, a positive feedback comment, or click that thumbs up button if you're watching us on